Crowhill here. Today we review an IPA and discuss a Mexican novella. Hey, Pigweed, good to see you. What'd you order for me tonight?
I got us 2 loose cannons.
Yeah, all
Chesterton
right.
brought it to us,
Yeah.
and
Left the can?
left the can.
All right, and why particularly these?
They won some national award or something or other, and they're just right down the road. I thought we'd acknowledge that.
All right, well, cheers.
Cheers.
And welcome everybody to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. So, what's on your mind today?
Well, Juan Preciado,
Okay.
Dolorita,
Yeah.
and Fulgor Sedano.
Fulgor. Is that how you pronounce that? Fulgor? Okay, I see. It must be time for PNC's Shortcut to the Classics.
Yes, where we read great books by the world's great authors, provided that they aren't too long.
Exactly. We try to stick to under 100 pages, but this one was more like 120.
Yes.
Yes.
So let's try these beers, and thank you there, Chesterton. So what was the competition? Was the United States Beer Tasting Championship.
Mm-hmm.
This year it was in Boston and Chicago. And what do we have here? Categories of
Lots of categories.
IPA and hazy IPA.
Both went to Heavy Seas Beer.
Both went to Loose Cannon and Hazy Cannon. And since we've talked about hazies,
Yeah.
since they've become a big deal,
Yeah.
we've never really done a head-to-head because I never felt like we had a good comparison, like just a random IPA and a random hazy.
That doesn't seem fair.
But
this is like the same beer, regular and hazy.
it's the hazy version of that beer.
The hazy version
So I
of that
thought it
beer.
was. I thought we'll acknowledge the local brewers and give us a chance to figure out what makes a hazy.
Okay.
So
right.
Chesterton also brought us a little. Some
Just
samples.
a little sample
Yeah.
of the... Okay, good. Thank you, Chesterton. All right. Well, that's the beer I drink all the time. If I'm at a bar and they've got Goose Island, Loose Cannon, it's kind of a go-to IPA.
Yeah, it's fairly common in
I know
these
it
parts.
really well, and it's a good beer.
You know, I always think of more exotic, hard-to-get beers as what are the really good ones. But according to this championship, it went to good old Loose Cannon. And let me see, what do we have in the hops? They use 3
Simcoe,
hops.
Centennial, and Palace. I don't know Palisade. I know the other
Palisade.
ones. There's so many hops these days. I mean,
But so they use that, and then they
dry hop
with the same
Yeah.
3.
Okay, interesting. So you're supposed to get grapefruit, pine, floral bitterness, that sort of thing. I love it. Loose Cannon is a great beer.
It's a great go-to. It's coming in pretty hot, 7.25.
Now, how's that going to compare with a hazy cannon?
Well, you're going to have to tell me does it retain the Loose Cannon flavors with something else, which is haziness. I don't know. I mean, other than visually, yes, it's hazy. You can't see
Typically,
through it.
my reaction to hazy IPAs is that it mellows the hops down considerably. But this one, not so much. This one, I think I'm still getting a lot of hop flavor here.
There is, I don't even know what they mean by juicy, except I kind of know what they mean by juicy. I'm getting that. There's more sort of flavor on the back end.
Yeah,
that
it's
is
interesting.
different and less bitterness and less aroma.
Yeah, it's almost like sharper, juicier
Yeah.
between the two of them.
Yeah.
But it's much. A lot of hazy IPAs I've had feel like they've taken an IPA and they've dampened it down and like added some flour to it or something, to kind of mellow it out. This one, not so much. This one, you're still getting the full IPA flavor.
But you don't get that upfront bitterness. And you don't get the aroma.
No.
Okay, maybe that. So I guess that's what from this one experiment, I would say that's the difference between a regular IPA and a hazy one. A little less upfront bitterness, a little
different mouthfeel also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
do I see Longinus over here?
gosh, I thought that guy would never get here.
All right, hey, Longinus.
All right, come on in. And apparently he's already picked himself a beer.
Yeah, so thank you for the Mick Ultra. Appreciate it.
He sort of has a beer.
Unfortunately, Chesterton has a direct connection to all of our doctors. And,
Yeah.
and
This so that was prescribed by
get
a
in here,
doctor.
Longinus.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what the doctor ordered.
That's
and,
right. So that's what you got to do.
that's
So
what you
Longinus
did.
is always here to help us out with shortcuts of the classics.
Yes,
These
he's
are-
our literary contributor,
That's
and
right.
that is that's great. But boy, oh boy,
What's
do
this a tough one?
we have a handful. This is what I'm going to ask of you guys.
Okay.
I'm going to ask for some first impressions and
Right.
talk about the experience of reading.
Right.
Then a little bio, and then we'll get into the book
try to get in here, make sure you're-
itself.
Yeah.
So first off, a little personal. How did it go?
I found it difficult. I found it very difficult.
Yeah.
It's confusing. It's not chronological. It uses sentence fragments. It uses weird punctuation. And I was kind of on the lookout for that because when we read Marquez, we read the whole thing and didn't even notice that there was no punctuation. So this
Right.
time I was like on the alert. Is this like a
Right.
Mexican thing
Yeah.
to do that? And
So, I mean, the little dashes told you that someone was speaking,
Yeah.
but he never told you who.
So there were like 3 different types of punctuation.
Yeah.
There were the regular quote marks, there were the dashes, and then there were those weird French things, the little
Like tiny parentheses, which I
sideways
think,
brackets,
which
yeah.
was somebody thinking,
Yeah.
or
I think if I was going to read it again, I would try to figure out what those different punctuation marks meant. I suspect that like sometimes it meant speaking, sometimes it meant thinking, sometimes it meant I don't know. It was,
Right.
yeah. Longinus, what do you
Well-
think in terms of just the experience?
The experience. Well, first of all, I think Douglas Weatherford did a pretty incredible job with the translation because I love the sentences. But once you put the sentences in a paragraph, I didn't know where the hell I was.
Yeah, I know.
But reading some of those sentences, and I have some to share. But I thought that was the language is actually absolutely beautiful, and to follow along. What I finally did was just throw it up and say, well, it's one guy, the narrator, and everything else is hallucinations or ghosts.
I know.
That's
I know. So mine was, I just ran into a stumbling block really soon, and I found this helpful summary that was like every 20 pages, it would give you a summary. So I would read the 20 pages, go back and go, did I get that right? And I don't know. Maybe 60%, and then I'm like, "Oh, so that's what was going on."
It's the kind of
and then
book
I
you
read the
feel
other,
like-
and then the next 20. So it took me a while. I read it all in one sitting, and then I felt at the end, I felt like the first time I've ever felt like, all right, now I need to reread the book,
Yeah.
because now I kind of know what's going on, and so I did start reading. Actually, I said, well, I know what I'll do. I'll listen to it, but even though there's very few indications what's going on here, there are no chapters.
Yeah.
But there are section breaks.
Yes.
And you know that different people are coming in.
Yeah.
When you're listeing to somody read it,
None of that is there.
I don't know when those breaks are taking
There ought
place.
to be like a little
So
ding.
it made it worse.
Yeah.
So I think I am going to do it, and as I go, then I'm probably just going to write. Okay, this is Juan and Dolorita.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? At the
you need-
head of each section. It's like
Right.
68 disjointed sections.
You need a study guide for this.
It
book.
zigzags in time. You don't really know.
Who's alive and dead?
You have a bunch of different first persons plus a third person narrator.
Yeah. It's very confusing. And it's definitely. I definitely got the sense that I had to read it again, and I didn't. I didn't read the whole thing again. I sort of skimmed parts of it again, and I listened to some of it on audio. To try
But
to
the
get a better
problem with the
sense of it.
audio was that thing there. It's like if you just told the little ding would tell you, okay, new paragraph.
New
That means
section.
we're not going to tell you who's speaking, but I'm going to tell you it's not the people that were speaking in the previous, which is help in some
That would
fashion.
help a little bit. Yeah.
Anyway, with all of that, all right, let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Rulfo
Yeah.
himself. Okay, I'm going to try this. His full name is Juan Nepomuceno Carlos Perez Rulfo Vizcaíno.
Oh,
But we're just going to cut that down to Juan Rulfo,
That
and I think
sounds
he
good
did.
to
That's
me,
born in 1917 in Sayula, in Jalisco, which is where the book takes place, and it even refers to his hometown of Sayula. He There was a strike at the University of Guadalajara, prevented him from enrolling, but he was able to audit literature classes in Mexico City. And what do you know? He never graduated college.
So I heard some biographical stuff about him today, but didn't he went to seminary for a little bit, and then he went to some other school to study to be a lawyer or something? But I again, I don't think he graduated, which is a recurring theme in a lot of these books.
All right. Kids out there, I'm not saying to be a successful...
If you want to be a great writer, you don't need
drop
to
out of college. No, that's not what I mean.
No,
So,
don't do that.
So, like I said, he with a fellowship that he earned, which was paid for by the CIA. If we have time at the end, I'll dip back into that. In 1952, and his only two published works were The Burning Plain, which is a collection of short stories in 53, and Pedro Paramo in 1955. Let's get some historical numbers here. The Mexican Revolution was 1910 to 1920,
right.
So he's born in 1917.
Yeah.
So obviously, he didn't experience it, but his elders all did, and he was still
right in his back.
He's still swimming in the aftermath of the revolution. Plus, in 26 to 29, when he is kind of grown up, or young, a young man, is the Cristero War,
right?
Which
because the Mexican Revolution suppressed the Catholics, and there were a lot of Catholics in Mexico. And they kind of fought back in the Cristero.
Which gave me an idea for another show. How come everybody's revolution sucks except for ours? Everybody swings the pendulum too far. We gave the French all of the people from the American Revolution were still alive and around.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Dummies. Yeah.
Can you invent the guillotine? What are you
because
doing?
They're French. That's why.
Jeez, okay, that's going to be another show. So I imagine that these things influenced his life and his writing, and we'll see later on. And he's part of the big three: Carlos Fuentes, Octavio Paz, and Juan Rulfo are the biggies. Now, if you look at your book,
Marquez doesn't rank.
He's Colombian.
Okay.
I mean, in Mexico.
Right. Okay.
But he did spend much of his life in Mexico.
I heard a
City.
fascinating thing about Marquez and this book today. Apparently, Marquez read it and read it again the same night. He read it twice the same night. And then it so impressed him that he was able afterwards to quote long passages from it.
Wow.
That's genius.
Right.
Material there.
Yeah. And you can see that, so this is 52, it started that magical realism. Yeah. And especially with him, and which was not, that's an
actually, why don't we take a minute and talk about magical realism? What is it? Yeah. What does magical realism mean? Because I've read some other books that claim to have some magical realism to them, and it's like, well, not really sure. Well,
I think that there are supernatural events that are taking place that people treat as normal.
Yeah.
Right? That it's not like, whoa, look at that supernatural event. It's just walking along. And to me, the best characterization or the best example of it, in my mind, is Metamorphosis.
I was thinking the same thing.
Right? Yeah. Nobody's blown away by the idea that Gregor is now a bug.
Nobody questions it.
They're just like, oh, jeez, he's a pain.
He turned into a bug.
Now he's disgusting.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. That's a good example.
And that's from the previous century. So
yeah, or like zombie movies and things like that. In a sense, there's a magical realism going on.
Yeah, because everybody's just going right along with it.
You're just accepting the idea. But see, I've read some other books that claim to be magical, and all they really are is there's like a slightly spooky feel. But there's no real assertion that what seems to be spooky is real. It's just that you have the spooky feel in the book. But anyway, this book, absolutely magical realism. There's
now. Thank you for properly pronouncing Marquez, like so few gringos ever do. And you see it right there. There's the A accent on the A on the cover. And where's the accent? Up here.
Paramo.
So I listened to some people talking, including when I tried to listen to that woman reading the book.
Yeah.
Paramo is the standard
the way
gringo.
You'd say it,
if you didn't pay attention to the accent, which it's there for a reason, doggone it.
Mrs. Pigweed gave us heck about how to pronounce Marquez, so I'll remember that.
She thought, I know.
That's right.
That's right.
It's Paramo. Okay, so
it sounds better too.
I
It
know.
does. It does sound better.
Paramo just
No,
seems like a
So let's look at the name, Pedro Paramo. Pedro is Peter,
yeah.
and Paramo is supposed to refer to like a barren wasteland or something.
Oh, I
like
didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like a Spanish word for a barren wasteland.
Well,
So, yeah.
there you go. That makes all right.
It makes a
well,
little
that's-
sense. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the opening scene or two, and then let's try to explain the book in a linear way that makes sense. So, what's the opening scene?
Well, the narrator, his mother is dying, and
But we later find out is Juan Preciado.
yes, and is a paramour of Pedro Paramo, right? So, the Juan Preciado is the novel's primary guy, right? And he's told his mother on her deathbed is saying, "You need to go and get what we deserve
Yes.
from Pedro Paramo, your father." And now he's never met his father because Pedro Paramo kind of kicked his mother, Paramo, sorry, kicked his mother to the side, and so Juan grew up with no father.
Right. Oh, but I mean, as far as the book goes, he's coming into town looking for Pedro Paramo.
Fulfilling a promise he made to his dying mother.
Right. And he runs into Abundio,
his half brother.
which he finds out
Yeah,
after
right.
he says I'm looking for my father. He goes, "Hey, that guy's
I am too.
yeah, that's my father too."
A lot of people are doing this. That's right. And there's an interesting passage there where it talks about they went up and down hills, but always descending. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Right,
There's this concept of as they're walking together towards this town, they're always going down.
Rough road to hell.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, it specifically says that this town that they're going to, Comala, how do you say it? Yeah, it's like at
Comala.
the gates of hell. And
That people from hell come up to get
to
blankets.
get a blanket.
Because compared to
Yes.
Comala, it is comfortable.
It's comfortable. That's right.
So yes. Then he gets to he says, "Go see what's the woman's name? Doña Eduviges, right? Go see her for a place to stay."
Yeah.
And she says what? She says,
I've been expecting you.
yeah. And he's like,
Right.
what?
Right. He's right. And he takes him into the back. Oh, you can stay here, but there's not a bed in there. It's just a room.
Yeah. And she's like, "Oh yeah, poor Abundio. Ever since that accident, he can't hear and he doesn't speak anymore."
But this is where I think in that scene where she's talking about I was expecting you, this is where you get the first indication of this weird communication between the living and the dead.
Yeah, because up till now it's a son looking for his father based on what his mother said. Runs into a guy who's going to help him out.
Yeah.
Everything seems to be going on pretty normal.
Yeah. And then they run into this person, and she seems to have some communication with his dead mother.
Yeah, she goes, "Oh yeah, she just told me yesterday." Well, she's
been
she's
dead
dead.
for-
So yeah, but she just told me yesterday. That's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, they're all of a
But
sudden,
it's not.
all of a sudden, you're in the land of what the heck is going on.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So there's and that continues. We
Well,
continue to get
Because
Throughout the whole book.
throughout the whole
But
book,
these
yeah.
people, she says, she goes, "Oh, because it couldn't have been the same Abundio because this guy seemed perfectly fine." She goes, "Well, he's dead anyway." So
Right.
you're like, "Oh boy, now we're
So I've been walking shoulder to shoulder with this guy.
where are we?" So the first two people he meets are dead,
Yeah.
and then is that what? Well, not chronologically, but then he goes from that house to the only actual living couple who aren't weird at all.
Turn out to be
Except they're naked.
Brother and sister
Right.
living in a
Yeah, the brother and sister and husband and wife or something.
Yes, and they're just plain naked when he gets there.
Yeah.
So not
There's
weird.
a lot
And
of
the roof
nakedness
was
going on.
collapsed in, I think, too, in the house.
Well, I mean, what do you care when you're dead if the roof is collapsed?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of nakedness is like a theme, that leitmotif that runs through the story. Yeah, so he's more and more we're getting accustomed to this idea that when you meet somebody or when you hear somebody say something, you're not sure if it's a real person or if it's a dead person or if it's a thought or if it's actual words or where the stuff is coming from.
All true. Yes, indeed. So, and then within these first two scenes, there's this horse running around crazy, and it's explained to him that who's the horse belonged to.
Was it Miguel Paramo, and that was Pedro's brother? No,
Right.
Pedro's son.
No,
Pedro's
son. Yeah, right. Juan's
and he wasn't a very good
half-brother.
person. Right. Juan's half brother.
Right, and the horse is running around crazy by himself because Miguel died, or I think Miguel died, and it was the horse's fault, right?
I don't remember that.
But this is all a flashback.
Yeah, of course.
Everything's a flashback. Everything.
Right.
You never know whether something is actually happening or if they're remembering it or something.
So it's like he goes into town to learn about his father, and all the snippets that we read about are about his father in different aspects from different points of view.
Yes, you get different points of view, different memories from live people and from dead people. So let's do the Miguel story, and then we'll do the Pedro story and get it to the end and see how that goes. So so Pedro has a bunch of bastard sons.
Yes.
Juan, we only meet Juan, Abundio, and Miguel, but Miguel's mother dies in childbirth, and the priest brings in the son. And he actually agrees to raise him because he didn't really. He wouldn't. I mean, he said, "Why don't you raise him?"
So he's the only one that was raised by Pedro.
Yes,
or that Pedro even acknowledged.
That he even acknowledged.
Right. Yeah.
And
so
how did Miguel turn out?
Oh yeah, he was evil.
Yeah,
totally.
Well, how couldn't you be being raised by Pedro? Because Pedro is this horrible bastard who's like raping and killing and doing anything he wants in the town, and basically being the head guy of the town, but in a kind of like a Italian mafia kind of.
Yeah,
way.
but, and a young man and a late teenager, with no self-control, and no reason to have any self-control. Oh, wait, hold on. So in that first scene, he points out to the land, like, see that mountaintop over there as far as you can see, and see that from there as far as you can see in the other direction. That's all Media Luna. So this is all Pedro Paramo's land.
I was wondering if Media Luna had some significance to the story, because it sort of means middle of the moon.
Right.
So,
Well, half moon.
Half moon. Okay.
I think the whole thing is a setting of purgatory.
Okay.
I was thinking of Dante.
Well, we'll be touching on some purgatories.
Yeah, it does have a purgatorial kind of a theme to it.
So his father is the ranch hand Fulgor comes in and says, Miguel killed somebody. He's like, you know what? Tell him I did it. And he says, and basically anything that Miguel does and people complain about, just blame it on me. I'll handle it.
Because nobody's going to mess with me anyway.
And nobody's going to mess with me anyway.
Right, 'cause he owns the whole town. Yeah, right.
Exactly. So Miguel turns out to be just the kind of jackass that you would expect under those conditions, but then dies young. From I thought he fell off the horse. I'm not sure.
What? Sorry, Chesterton. Yeah, you're right.
What is he saying?
Didn't quite have the electronics hooked up right there.
Okay.
Thank you, Chesterton. All right, go ahead.
Yes, so is that all we need to say about Miguel here?
I think so.
He was a raper. Oh, and there was
He raped Anna, right? And Anna was whose niece?
Father Renteria. He killed. Oh yeah, that's right. He killed Anna's father, Father Renteria's brother. Raped her. Then when he died, Father Renteria is in a position of presiding over the funeral.
Right.
And, he's sort of reluctant to absolve the man's sins, considering.
Yeah.
But
Right.
Well, he does it anyway, right?
Yeah, well, so Father Renteria was very compromised.
Yeah.
And
aware of it.
Yeah.
But didn't stop him.
Yeah, and I got a strong sense.
A little sympathetic. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got a strong sense reading about Father Renteria that of a lot of the kinds of conflicts that inevitably took place during that Catholic revolt against Spain that you clearly had against Spain, against the Mexican government, that you clearly had a lot of people who were stuck in very difficult situations.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a priest, but I'm taking up arms against the government, right? And so I think
he says, you know, you can't eat prayers.
Yeah. So in a way, I think he's a demonstration of this kind of compromising, get along with the power and that sort of thing. He's not in any way an admirable priest.
He's not. But I'm sympathetic to the idea that there will be no funding for your church,
right?
If you don't suck up to the Paramos.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
So okay, what?
So all right. So let's tell Pedro's story. No, I guess get to the man on the cover of the book.
Well, do we need to talk about what happens to Juan?
Yeah, okay. So after he leaves the naked, incestuous couple,
right? Yeah, I mean, halfway through the book, he dies.
It just dies,
and the book doesn't stop there. He's dead.
Keeps on going.
The book keeps going, but now it's all dead people.
And he's still talking and narrating, and he's stuck in the same coffin with somebody else.
Yes.
So apparently he dies at the same time, and I don't know, there's a coffin shortage or something.
And there's this funny thing where there's like this communication between the coffins. They're like, oh yeah, that's Jose. He's in the next coffin over.
Yeah.
And you know, it's really weird.
Yeah.
The dead people are talking as if they're aware that they're dead and they're aware that they're in the grave, and they're just like, oh, that's so and so mumbling down. What is he saying?
Yeah.
You know, it's very, very strange. Right. Okay, so Juan dies, and then we start to get the backstory about who this Pedro Paramo character really is.
Right, so the is it Damiana Cisneros? Is she the one that's in the coffin with him? Is she the one who helped procure women for Miguel to assault?
Yeah, so she was a servant who once worked for Pedro and helps guide Juan when he arrives in Comala. So she's in a way like she's the connection between living and dead people or something like that.
Right.
It's a very weird relationship there.
But I thought she was the one who was. She was the one with the fake, like a bundle of sticks that she thought was a baby, and
yeah, everybody here is crazy.
So everybody's either crazy or dead.
Yeah,
and
yes.
So from this chat from the dead people and a couple of live people, you start to get the backstory of Pedro, who himself did not grow up wealthy and powerful, but the first instance is his love for Susanna.
Oh yeah, as a kid. So he's raping all these women, and but there's one woman that he actually loves, and that's Susanna San Juan, and he knew her as a child, and they played together and
they moved away,
did various things, and then she moved away and she got married. But then her husband died, and she came back to the town.
Right.
But she was a little nuts when she came back, and he married her anyway.
Right. But hold on, before we get there, he's as a young man, he begins acquiring land.
Yeah. Not legally.
Right. By hook and by crook, and also the first thing he does is say, "Who do I owe the most money to?" Well, it was Juan Preciado's family.
Yeah.
So he said, I'll marry her, and tells her, I'll marry you tomorrow. So send somebody else.
Right. He sends somebody else to propose, and she says, well, I want to wait a week. No.
No, actually, I'm on my days here.
Yeah,
I think
right.
it would be, he says, I don't care.
He says, doesn't matter, you're getting married tomorrow. Yeah, it's pretty weird. Yeah.
And then so she, then she's sick of him.
Yeah.
And they move away.
Yeah.
So as we know, he comes back, but he acquires this land illegally. What's the next event in Pedro's life when the revolutionaries show up?
Yeah, so there's an army that shows up they're involved in this fight. This is the Catholic fight against Mexico, and they're.
No, this is just regular revolutionaries.
Is it at that point? I thought it was the other one. But anyway.
Cristeros.
Yeah.
I'm not
So they come around and they're looking for support. They're looking for money.
Or basically they roll in, they go, "We're the revolutionaries, and we're here to take the money and land of powerful men like you." And he just turns it right around and says,
he's cleverly
I know.
sneaks through this whole thing.
he's like, "How about this? I'll give you 10,000 pay." Right? He's like, "I'll just be your benefactor.
Yeah.
But I'm not really going to give you all the money. I'm going
It's safer here. Anyway.
It's safer here. You might lose it along the way.
Just come back.
Come back if you need it.
Right.
And they're like,
Sure, sounds like a good idea.
I know, right?
And then they come back later to get some money from him, and he's like, "What are you asking me for? There's that rich town over there.
There are towns all over the place.
I
that
know.
you
Why
can
don't,
go
why, don't
to
you
store.
go, why don't you go deal with those guys?"
He also gets them 300 men.
Yes.
And gives them right.
Yes.
Gives them 300
Gives them
men.
And one of
300
the men,
soldiers.
one of the men he gives them is a guy who just loves to fight anyway. He's
Right.
he's like,
I don't really care which side I'm on.
Exactly.
And, then,
I just
and Pedro doesn't either. He's like, "What's the winning side?"
Right. He just
And-
wants to be on the winning side.
Yes,
Right.
and basically, feel free to switch sides, and I'll finance that one if you
Yeah.
think it's swinging the other way.
right.
But yeah, so he's a piece of crap.
But he doesn't really finance it. I mean, he gives
I
some
know,
money.
I know.
He sets himself up as financing these things, but he doesn't really. He gives them
No.
some money, and then
But he does sell the idea that he's on their side. You're not going to take my money. And of course, they had the muscle to do it, but and that just shows his skill as a
So
heartless
I was
negotiator.
recently looking up the statistics on what percentage of the population are psychopaths, narcissists, sadists, and the dark tetrad sort of characteristics. And it's kind of scary that there's like persistent in the human population. You have 1 to 2% psychopaths and 1 to 2% narcissists and Machiavellians and all. So if you get all those things together,
And
you
they're
win
not
the
in
lottery.
insane asylums.
No.
They're running our
They're
businesses and our
CEOs
government.
and senators and so forth. So,
Yeah.
but the idea is Pedro is basically one of those guys.
You're right.
He is one of
That's
these
a good
guys
point.
where you
Yeah.
you take all these different dark characteristics, and he won the jackpot and got all of them. He's just a rotten guy.
So then, right. So all right. So now we're up to the Susanna story, right?
Yeah.
Her husband dies, and
Yes.
then what?
Yeah, so her husband dies and she moves back to the town. I mean, it's never really clear to me why she moves back to the town, but Pedro has loved her his whole life, and she's the only woman he ever loved, and he wants to marry her, and he does, but she basically stays aloof. the whole time.
She's kind of crazy. She's still pining the death of her real love.
But she's also always making these excuses. Sorry, honey, I have a headache tonight. That kind of thing, and she's always putting him off. So Pedro never really gets her, and it's kind of interesting that there's that character in this story, because Pedro gets everything he wants, except
Except
he
for
never
her.
really gets her.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then when she dies,
Yeah.
that's when Pedro,
That's the end of him. Yeah.
he just stops taking care of the land, which puts so much devastation on the town.
Yeah. Well, so as I understand
More than
it,
he already has.
yeah, exactly. Well, they're ringing the church bells for
All
her.
day for 3 days. Yeah.
And people start showing up in the town, and it turns into a big party. And he's like, "You disrespectful
Yeah.
SOBs! My wife is," and says everybody there works on his land. He kicks them all off.
So basically what he does is he contrives to starve them all to death.
Yes.
Because
So then you find it. So this is why this town is abandoned when Juan Preciado
right.
shows up in the
Yeah.
very beginning. You're like, what happened to this place?
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened to this place.
This is actually, I find it kind of fascinating that in a lot of ways, Pedro Paramo is the cold-hearted, narcissistic, selfish bastard who only does things for his own interest. But when Susana San Juan dies, that affects him so deeply that he now becomes the hurt victim.
Yes.
And lashes out against everybody else. And I find that kind of an interesting contrast, because normally you would think of the that kind of a character is like, oh well, that's too bad. I'll move on to somebody else. You know,
Right,
But that's not the
but
way it
there's
goes.
but there's a mirror situation of when he was a young man and his father was accidentally killed. That he went through and killed everybody at it's like the
That's
Red
right.
Wedding.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right.
Right? And I don't know if I don't think he killed him at the wedding, or if he individually hunted everybody who was at the wedding where his father was killed
Yeah.
after the wedding,
Yeah.
and individually killed them all who were at there because he wasn't sure who accidentally shot his dad.
Yeah. Right.
So
He's a psychopath. I mean,
Yeah,
no question
he-
about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
and so sometimes they become very successful and powerful,
Yeah.
That's right.
or
So-
sociopath. I'm not sure. What.
Yeah, good questions.
I think the psychopath is more the sociopath is more impulsive.
Okay,
The psychopath,
it's more calculating.
yeah, but still,
Okay.
who doesn't really know how to feel, but has learned by observation. It doesn't actually feel.
Yeah.
But it's like, all right, I know I'm supposed to be sympathetic in this
When
situation.
I watch other people, I see they do these things, so I'll do that.
yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's
See,
pretty-
the smarmy kind
pretty
of fake,
spooky,
fake
actually.
friendly guy. So then, so now everybody's off the land. He's just sitting there by himself,
Waiting to die.
waiting to die, mourning Susanna, and then talk about mirrors. The original Abundio that we met in the first page, the bastard son, has lost his wife and doesn't have the money to pay for her burial.
Yeah.
So he crawls to
Drunk as a skunk.
drunks, hammered,
Yeah. Yeah. Crawls back trying to get the money to pay for the funeral. That's right.
and how'd that go?
He
But-
didn't get anything.
No, Pedro's like, who are you?
Yeah.
And he murders him.
Yeah.
He stabs and kills his father, and then his body. I always enjoy the last page. Or I always enjoy the last paragraph, just to see what an author feels like how he feels he should end a story, and.
So while you're
I
looking
can't see it.
Okay, what do you got here?
Yeah, the last paragraph here.
Okay.
There you go.
He supported himself as Damiano Cisneros' arms and tried to walk. After a few steps, he fell, pleading on the inside, but without saying a word. He hit the ground with a hollow thud, crumbling as if he were a pile of rocks. That's actually an interesting thing because there are a couple of times where people their bodies seem to like disappear or fall
Melt
apart.
in a mud.
Oh, right. So Susanna was lowered down into a well.
Yes, and she was supposed to
'cause
grab something.
Dad thought that there were some gold coins in the
Right.
bottom
Yeah.
of the well.
And he went to she went to grab like a skull, and it fell apart in her hand. That was pretty
Yeah.
gruesome.
And the other one was when Juan first realizes that he's in the grave,
Yeah.
that he, there's some body parts that are crumbling and falling apart.
Yeah.
And,
There's a lot. So there are a lot of interesting themes going on in this book, and I'd like to touch on those for a minute. But another thing I heard, I was listening to this podcast about the book, and they were saying that the book overall has a feel like an American Western in a way. And I thought about that. I thought, yeah, to a certain extent, it's like this dry, barren town where everybody's poor, and there's some kind of a bastard who's behaving badly. So, I mean, those things all kind of fit in. With
right. People on horseback and carrying firearms
yeah,
and
and things just being kind of
dusty and
dusty, dusty and dry. And so I thought that was pretty interesting.
All right, so we talked about the hero's journey,
Right.
and the quest motif, and so it could. All right, let's say it's like this: a book opens, and the son has been whisked away as an infant, away from the father. The father rules as a cruel tyrant.
Right.
He learns things in a far-off land. All right, this is all very quest motify. This is all very Joseph Campbell. He returns back to depose the father and restore peace and tranquility to the land.
Yeah, doesn't happen.
It's like he didn't get the full memo on how the Joseph. So it kind of starts off with all the possibilities
that
it would work that way, and
Yes.
then it doesn't happen at all or at all.
No, it doesn't. It's not. It doesn't. There's no hero in this story.
Right. I mean, I'm not even sure who's the protagonist. Is it Juan, who seems like he's bound to be, as the book starts, and then he just dies in the middle of the book and comments from the grave.
So let me go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, with the whole idea of the quest, but Juan does get the truth. He gets to know who his father was.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, right.
That's true. He doesn't get. Well, actually, he's supposed to go to get what was owed them.
Right.
Okay.
Cash. He's like, look, some child support that you never paid for my entire
That's
life.
an interesting question. Does he get what was owed him?
And
Does I mean, like, what really was owed to him?
that's all Mom said. Just get what's owed to us.
Get what's owed to us. I mean, maybe nothing was owed to us except death.
Right.
I mean, maybe that's one way to look at it. Yeah. So let me mention a couple possible themes, and you tell me what you think. So, death and the supernatural.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, everybody's dead, and there's this communication between the living and the dead, and there's this communication between dead people. So that's a very clear thing. How about memory and time?
Yeah. So there's Faulkner was doing this 30 years before. As I Lay Dying was 1930, and it's told from the perspective of a woman in a coffin, being going from some place to another. But the famous Faulkner quote is, "The past is never dead. It's not even past." Meaning that, right? You live
In the past.
Yes, the past is always with you, and I think these voices from the ground are that, just because people are dead doesn't mean that they're
not speaking to you.
They're not
still.
speaking to you.
Yeah.
So I think there's some of that going on.
There is some of that going on. There's a proverb that talks about, listen to the instruction of your father and your mother. There will be a voice that you'll hear, and that kind of concept of these voices that you hear, this instruction, these things that you hear from your parents that keep coming back to you.
Do you? The song's not that old. A country song called "I Hear Voices."
Yeah.
And the chorus is basically is him being reminded of the instruction of his parents and his grandparents as he goes through life.
Yes.
And the chorus is, I hear voices, and that's what I thought of.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same kind of a concept, and this novel basically pulls that out pretty dramatically. How about despair and hopelessness? Because there's not much hope in this. Everything is. This town is. We're told from very early in the book, is at the gates of hell.
That's right.
And everybody is talking. Nobody has any hope of heaven.
Well,
Everything.
the priest sucks, right?
Yeah, the priest is a
right, so
terrible
he's not
guy.
getting the absolute.
Nobody has any hope of heaven. Everything is about is despairing. It's a very dark kind of a thing. And then power and corruption.
I got two of them here. The only thing that keeps a person going is the hope that you'll end up someplace different after you die. But when one door slams in your face and the other only takes you straight to hell, it would be better to never have been born. For me, Juan Preciado, heaven is right here where I am not right now. And that's his coffin mate without a soul. He says, well, what about your soul? He says, I suspect it's wandering the earth like so many others, searching for anyone still alive who'll pray for it. How about the hope? You paid dearly for that. It was that type of illusion that made me live longer than I should have.
Right.
There was an interesting
It's harsh.
conversation between two women where one woman asked the other, "Do you believe in hell?" She said, "Do you believe in heaven?" She said, "Yes, I believe in hell." And the other one says, "I just believe in hell."
No, but there is something about that first comment that it's that sense of hope. is the only thing that can keep you going at some point. That there is, if you thought that there was nothing better especially in times, we live in such cushy times now. I think religion is on the decline because we're so comfortable.
Yeah.
I think throughout all of history, life has been so harsh. Plagues and 4 out of your 7 kids die in childbirth.
Yeah.
That.
If you didn't have some other kind of a hope, you wouldn't put up with all this.
You really wouldn't. I mean, how could you even? It was religion was the thing that helped you get through your own life, because why?
Yeah.
And you're going, well, it's got to get better. I mean, there's only one. We suffer here so that we can enjoy that there, and then when you don't suffer here, I'm going to off on another thing. When life is cushy.
Yeah.
Then you lose your worry about the better life later.
Well, atheists have fewer children.
And
go
then
ahead.
you have
I was going to say, so here's another quote.
Okay.
I think this is from Dona. So the 2 women are talking.
This is
That's the price I paid for hoping to find my son, who, as it turns out, was nothing more than a longing, since I never really had a son.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's like...
yes. So there's another hopelessness. Yes, the suffering, the hopelessness.
So hope is always for something you never had, you never will have, there never possibly could have.
It's not a very positive view of hope.
No. And one thing that surprised me is, it didn't surprise me reading the book. Reading the book and seeing the complete lack of any hope or consolation being offered by the priest or being offered by religion or any of that kind of stuff, that didn't surprise me at all. What did surprise me is to later learn that the author actually was in seminary school for a couple of years. And I thought, didn't you get some glimmer of something that would brighten things up just a touch, to try to say, okay, there's some amount of hope going on here, but no, there's none.
Yeah, no. The whole hope situation here is hopeless.
Yeah. It's pretty
Now,
Well, here's another one. I just it's true, Dorothea. It was the murmuring that killed me, and then it comes into the italics and the funny French quotes.
Yeah.
You'll find my sanctuary there, the place I most loved, where I grew dizzy from an abundance of hope and dreams. So, and that is my town rising from the plain. So he's talking about the hell that he lives in.
Yeah. And he even misinterprets his own cause of death,
Right.
which was just
fright.
Yeah, frankly, yes.
Yes.
You're like, a ghost town normally means nobody's there, but this is a ghost town.
No, this is a town of ghosts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the revolution does Pedro represent the cruel landowner that steals land from peasants and abuses the peasant getting what he's owed, which would be a pro-revolution message?
Well, let me ask this question.
Yes.
Because was Juan Rulfo? Did I say it right? I don't know. There is discussions of the revolution, but not in a political way. It's just
just
there,
practical.
Just practical.
Yeah. So I don't
know. I don't think
he.
He commenting on politics and the state of the nation.
I think you're
that.
right. I don't get. Even though Pedro Paramo does represent the evil landlord that needs to be overthrown for the,
Right.
But really, are the revolutionaries seem like the good guys? I don't think Juan Rulfo paints them as the good guys.
No, there's very little political message in this book. It's more about hopelessness and despair and weird communication between the living and the dead. And
all right, let me ask you this question: was there any acts of kindness that you remember? Was there any person that did something moral or right or valuable to the community?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
I can't think of one.
I can't think of one either.
Yeah, I can't think. there's no. It's like there's no redeeming character in this book.
Yeah, and Juan Rulfo, Juan Preciado dies before he could have done anything kind, and you have a bunch of rapists and murderers and the dirty priests, and then the one priest from the other village is like, dude, you suck, and he wouldn't even give him absolution. I was like, priests, I guess.
Well, priests have to go to confession too.
All right.
So,
yeah.
Right.
But I think that's a great point on Genesis. There's like nobody shows any redeeming characteristics in any way in this book.
Right.
Nobody's kind. Nobody's generous. Nobody's brave.
Right.
Yeah, really.
What? It was beautiful.
Yeah, but
despite all that,
wasn't there just a sense of just broad lawlessness? Like, was there anybody that you could report Pedro Paramo to?
No.
Like, I'm going to the sheriff in town, and
no, none of that.
no way. Nobody's in charge. The revolutionaries aren't the good guys. So I think a little bit of that is Rulfo saying. Explaining what the times were like.
Yeah.
Can you imagine
Anarchy.
when there's no central government, when there's no law to appeal to, when the head honcho on the land is the law, and rapes and murders occur regularly, and nothing
can be done.
Nothing can be done about it.
Right.
Hardcore.
What a dark.
Now I watched the 1967 Mexican black and white movie the other day, and
this.
Yeah, and my Spanish isn't good enough to have understood it if I hadn't read the book. But when characters come in, I'm like, oh, I see, that's that person. It's told in a kind of a linear fashion. The Juan Rulfo and his companion, which one is it? Is it Doroteo or is it Damiana Cisneros? I forget. So they're in a basement. It's actually a big room, so they're not snuggled up in a coffin. And they're walking around, and I don't know if there's any indication in the dialogue that they're dead. I only knew it because of the book,
right?
But I didn't know. My Spanish isn't good enough to have picked up the subtlety of the thing. The thing about the red wedding isn't in it, but it just shows him kicking everybody off the land and sitting there in a chair when he's kind of old, and then Abundio comes up drunk, stabs and kills him. So then when I was looking for it, I saw Pedro Paramo Netflix, and I was like, boom, I'm gonna read the book, watch the movie. It's in post-production. It'll be out in the fall.
Okay.
So I think we should watch it and do a little 15-minute movie review.
There we go.
Whenever it comes out. They didn't say exactly when, but it's on the horizon.
So very interesting book, lots of interesting themes, not cheerful.
Not cheerful. And I might give another shot this weekend.
I might read it again. I might read it again now that I think I know what's actually happening.
Yes, you're like,
it's very confusing. On your first read, you're going to be confused.
Yes, there is no doubt about it. Well,
and the translator says so. In the back, he's I'm going to translate it so it's going to be really confusing to you.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because I did hear this discussion of them talking about the previous translation that everyone was reading, that she put all of the punctuation in. All of that.
And he tried to preserve the weird
yes, and they said no, that this will become the definitive
because he tried to preserve it.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought
very good.
I thought it was. I mean, some of those sentences were like, man, that's beautiful, even though it's kind of weird.
Weird, spooky, awful.
Right. All right, gentlemen.
All right, there we go. Cheers.
All right.
Thanks so much for listening to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Remember to visit us at pigweedandcrowhill.com or send us an email at pigweedshow@gmail.com.